Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Broadcasting Seeds, where we plant the seeds of curiosity and watch them grow into full-blown questions about the strange and mysterious world we live in. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today we're diving into a topic that mixes prophecy, papal intrigue, conspiracy, and a touch of the apocalyptic, a blend that's like catnip for those of us fascinated by the weird and unexplained. We're talking about two major prophecies that have haunted the Catholic Church and captivated believers, scholars, and conspiracy theorists for centuries: the prophecy of the popes and the prophecy of John XXIII. Both are wrapped in enigma, shrouded in secrecy, and, depending on who you ask, could be warnings about the end of the world or just a clever bit of forgery. Either way, they've left a lasting mark on the church and the collective imagination of those who like to think there's more to the story. So, here's the question we're going to tackle today. Are these prophecies genuine messages from beyond, or are they elaborate hoaxes meant to manipulate the faithful and the curious alike? More importantly, what could these prophecies mean for the future of the church and the world as we know it? Buckle up, folks. This one's going to get a little wild. We'll be diving deep into the origin stories, breaking down the cryptic messages, and even throwing in a theory or two that might just blow your mind. You know how we do it here on Broadcasting Seeds. We plant those thoughts, and before you know it, you're neck deep in ideas you didn't even know were swirling around up there. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's set the stage. We've got some ancient texts, secret Vatican knowledge, and, wait for it, Nostradamus possibly making a guest appearance. Yeah, that Nostradamus. I told you it was going to get wild. So let's start peeling back the layers, because nothing says, welcome to the show, like diving headfirst into centuries-old mysteries about the end of the world. Ready? Let's go. All right, we've got the green light, so let's jump right in. First things first, where did this prophecy of the popes even come from? I mean, how does something as bizarre as a centuries-long list of future popes manage to capture people's imaginations for this long? The answer, like most good conspiracy stories, starts in the Middle Ages, a time when people were almost as obsessed with the apocalypse as we are with binge-watching true crime shows today. The prophecy of the popes is said to have been written by a 12th century Irish archbishop named Saint Malachy. Now, legend has it that Saint Malachy was just minding his own business when he suddenly had a vision of all the future popes, all the way down to the very last one, who, spoiler alert, is supposed to be some guy named Petrus Romanus, or Peter the Roman. Sounds intense, right? But wait, it gets weirder. According to the prophecy, there will be 112 popes, each described in a short, cryptic Latin phrase. These descriptions supposedly correspond to significant details about each pope's life, personality, or reign. For example, Pope John Paul II was linked to the phrase "from the labor of the sun," which some say refers to his Polish roots in the east, where the sun rises, or even to his rare double eclipse birth and death. Coincidence? Maybe. Spooky? Definitely. But here's the kicker. St. Malachy's prophecies didn't surface until around 1590, more than 4 centuries after he supposedly wrote them. They appeared right in the middle of a heated papal election. That's like someone pulling out a mysterious guidebook, predicting Super Bowl winners halfway through the season. It smells a little fishy, doesn't it? Many scholars believe the prophecy was a forgery, cooked up to give a little nudge to a specific candidate during that papal election. After all, if you can say, hey, look, my guy is literally in this prophecy, you've got a pretty solid campaign slogan. It's like ancient political marketing, but with Latin phrases and religious overtones. Now, despite the shady origins, people kept coming back to this prophecy, especially because some of the phrases seem eerily accurate when looking at the line of popes from the 16th century onwards. Of course, skeptics argue that these descriptions are so vague they could apply to just about anyone. You know, like how a daily horoscope is written so broadly that it feels like it's just for you, even though it could easily apply to your neighbor, your dog, or your houseplant. But vague or not, the prophecy rolls on, and here's where it gets really juicy, because we're currently on Pope Francis, who, according to some interpretations, might just be the second to last pope. That means the next guy could be Petrus Romanus, the pope who oversees the church during a time of great tribulation, possibly leading to the end of the world. No pressure, though. So where did this thing really come from? Did Saint Malachy have a vision? Was it a 16th century forgery designed to push political agendas? Or was there something even more mysterious at play here? It's important to remember that the Middle Ages were a time when prophecy wasn't exactly unusual. People were fascinated by omens, visions, and anything that hinted at the future, especially when it came to the church. It's entirely possible that someone, maybe even several someones, over the years decided to play into that fascination by crafting this long-running narrative about the fate of the papacy. But this isn't the only prophecy circling the Vatican like a hawk, eyeing its next meal. Oh no, there's more to this story, because the 20th century gave us another wild set of predictions, courtesy of none other than Pope John XXIII. And trust me, it's got everything you'd expect from a good conspiracy theory: secret writings, hidden knowledge, and predictions that stretch into our modern world. But before we jump into that rabbit hole, let's pause for a moment to consider what this prophecy of the popes tells us about the time it emerged in. Was it a tool of manipulation, a genuine divine vision, or just another historical oddity that gained a life of its own? Wherever you land on that, one thing's for sure: the prophecy has staying power, and with only one more pope to go, according to some interpretations, we might not have to wait long to see how it all plays out. All right, let's keep this ride moving. Now that we've got a good sense of what the prophecy of the popes is all about, it's time to shift gears and talk about another set of predictions that hit the world stage, this time in the 20th century. Enter the prophecy of John XXIII, which is a little more modern, but no less mysterious. And in case you're wondering, yes, we're talking about the same Pope John XXIII who called for the Second Vatican Council, shaking up the Catholic Church in ways no one saw coming. But before he became Pope, there's a theory that he penned a series of strange and cryptic predictions, much like Saint Malachy, only this time they cover everything from world wars to space travel, and even, according to some interpretations, possible contact with extraterrestrials. Yep, that's right, aliens, folks. I told you it was going to get wild. So, how did these prophecies come to light, and what exactly did John XXIII predict? Well, the prophecy of John XXIII was supposedly written in the 1930s, long before his papacy, and kept hidden within the Vatican archives. It wasn't until after his death in 1963 that these mysterious writings surfaced. At least that's what the story claims. There are no official Vatican documents confirming this prophecy, and many believe it's either a fabrication or one of those lost texts that nobody ever wanted the public to see. But regardless of its origins, the prophecies linked to John 23 have been dissected and analyzed by conspiracy theorists and scholars alike. Now, unlike the prophecy of the popes, John 23's predictions weren't focused solely on the future of the church. Instead, his vision expanded to global events, predicting wars, peace agreements, and advancements in technology that would change the world. Some of these predictions seem eerily on point when we look back at the 20th century. He is said to have predicted World War II, the Cold War, and the rapid rise of technology, things that at the time were unimaginable. And then there's the prediction that makes this one stand out: extraterrestrial contact. Yeah, you heard that right. According to some interpretations of his writings, John 23 believed humanity would make contact with beings from another world. There's even a popular story that while he was pope, he had a personal encounter with an alien. No joke. The legend says that while John 23 was walking in the Vatican gardens one evening, he met with a tall, radiant figure that communicated with him, though the details of this supposed meeting are scarce. Now, whether that's just Vatican urban legend or something more is up for debate, but it certainly adds to the air of mystery surrounding him. But back to the prophecy. Like the prophecy of the popes, the prophecy of John XXIII is filled with vague phrases and cryptic language, which has led many to doubt its authenticity. After all, writing something that can be interpreted in 100 different ways doesn't exactly scream divine foresight. It screams, I'm leaving this open so you can fit whatever world event happens into it. For example, one of the predictions reads something along the lines of, there will come a time when fire will fall from the sky and men will walk upon the stars. Some take this to mean nuclear war. Others see it as a reference to space exploration. It's broad enough that you can project all kinds of meanings onto it, depending on how you want to interpret the future. And while these prophecies are fascinating, the skepticism surrounding them is just as intriguing. Some people believe that John 23 may have written them, but they've been altered or embellished over time. Others think the whole thing is a modern fabrication designed to mystify people after his death, when his legacy as a reformer made him an iconic figure. But here's where things get really interesting. There's a theory that connects these two prophecies: the prophecy of the popes and the prophecy of John XXIII, through none other than Nostradamus himself. Yep, good old Nostradamus, the king of cryptic predictions. Some scholars believe that Nostradamus, or those influenced by his style, may have had a hand in both prophecies, particularly the prophecy of the popes. The idea here is that the prophecies were written not by Saint Malachy or John XXIII, but by someone trying to emulate the vague apocalyptic style that made Nostradamus so famous. This theory suggests that the prophecy of the popes could actually be a 16th century creation by someone in the Nostradamus circle, maybe even Nostradamus himself, who was trying to manipulate papal elections or stir up some good old-fashioned fear about the end times. After all, if you can get people thinking the world is about to end, you can get them to do just about anything, right? It's a fascinating idea, especially considering how Nostradamus' own writings have been interpreted and reinterpreted to fit just about every major event since he first picked up a quill. The thought that his influence might have stretched into the world of papal prophecy adds a whole new layer of mystery to both of these sets of predictions. So now we've got Saint Malachy, John 23, and maybe even Nostradamus in the mix. The question is, who's really behind these prophecies, and are they meant to guide us, scare us, or just leave us scratching our heads? Let's keep this train rolling now that we've laid the groundwork for both the prophecy of the popes and the prophecy of John XXIII, and even tossed Nostradamus into the mix. It's time to look at how the Catholic Church itself has responded to these prophecies over the centuries. You'd think that something as dramatic and potentially apocalyptic as these predictions would either be outright embraced or totally condemned by the Church, right? Well, as with most things Vatican related, the truth is a bit more complex. Let's start with the prophecy of the popes, because that one has had a much longer runway to stir up intrigue. Officially, the Catholic Church has never endorsed Saint Malachy's prophecy. In fact, many church scholars have come out to call it a forgery, likely created during the 1590s papal conclave to give one candidate an edge over the others. The timing of its appearance was just too convenient, and the Church, while not outright banning or suppressing the prophecy, has kept a healthy distance from it. You won't find the prophecy of the popes in any official church teaching or doctrine, and it's not something you'll hear in Sunday Mass. But here's the thing. Just because the Church hasn't embraced the prophecy doesn't mean it hasn't influenced the faithful or even the way popes are viewed. Throughout history, popes and their supporters have sometimes leaned into the prophecy, especially when the cryptic Latin descriptions line up eerily well with actual events. Take, for instance, Pope Benedict XIV, whose phrase in the prophecy was "religion depopulated," which many took to refer to the devastation of World War I and the disillusionment that followed. While Benedict himself never acknowledged the prophecy, it's hard to ignore how some of these descriptions seem to fit. And let's not forget about the apocalyptic undertones of the final pope, Petrus Romanus. The idea that the papacy itself could end, or that the Church could face its greatest trial under this mysterious figure, has hung over the heads of some believers like a dark cloud. In the same way, people get jittery about Nostradamus's predictions when they seem to line up with real-world events. The prophecy of Petrus Romanus has caused more than a few Catholics to wonder whether the end times might really be around the corner. Now, let's pivot to the prophecy of John XXIII, which is an even trickier subject for the Church. John XXIII was a beloved pope, known for his warmth, humility, and for convening the Second Vatican Council, which brought sweeping reforms to the Church in the 1960s. His legacy is one of openness and modernization, so the idea that he left behind a secret set of cryptic, mystical prophecies doesn't quite fit with the image most people have of him. The Church has been even more guarded when it comes to this prophecy. It's not part of any official narrative, and there's little evidence to suggest that John XXIII himself ever wrote anything like it. In fact, much like the prophecy of the popes, it's widely considered a hoax, or at least heavily embellished after his death to cash in on his popularity. But here's where things get a little sticky. Despite the Church's reluctance to engage with these prophecies, both sets have had an undeniable impact on the way people view the papacy and the future of the Church. The idea that the Vatican might be sitting on secret knowledge about the end times, global upheavals, or even extraterrestrial life has fueled countless conspiracy theories over the years. And while the Church doesn't officially support these ideas, it also hasn't done much to dispel them. In fact, the Vatican is known for its secrecy, which only adds fuel to the fire. The Vatican archives are rumored to contain all sorts of hidden documents, some of which conspiracy theorists believe could confirm the prophecies, or at least offer more clues about their origins. While the Church would argue that its secrecy is about preserving sensitive historical documents and maintaining its spiritual authority, others see it as evidence that there's something deeper going on. So where does this leave the average Catholic? For most, these prophecies are interesting, but not central to their faith. The Church is, at its core, about guiding its followers spiritually, not engaging in end-time speculation. But for those who are drawn to the mystical or apocalyptic, these prophecies have taken on a life of their own, creating a fascinating intersection between faith, mystery, and conspiracy. It's a balancing act for the church. On one hand, it has to maintain its spiritual authority and keep the focus on the teachings of Christ, not on speculative prophecies. On the other hand, it can't completely ignore the fact that these predictions have gripped the imagination of millions and have, at times, seemed uncannily accurate. The church's careful dance around these prophecies is part of what makes them so enduring and so controversial. But what about the modern world? Why are these ancient and supposedly cryptic predictions still relevant today, especially when most people aren't spending their days worrying about papal succession or divine visions? Well, that's what we'll dive into next, the surprising ways these prophecies are influencing modern thought, culture, and even global events. Let's get into the heart of why these ancient prophecies still matter in today's world. You might be thinking, okay, so the prophecy of the popes and the prophecy of John XXIII are interesting historical footnotes, but why should I care about them now? Well, believe it or not, these prophecies still have a surprisingly strong grip on modern culture, and in ways that go beyond just your typical conspiracy circles. Let's start with how these prophecies fit into today's fascination with end times predictions and apocalyptic thinking. Look, we've always had a bit of a fascination with doomsday scenarios, but in recent years, that interest has exploded. You see it everywhere, from the rise in popularity of TV shows about zombies and global collapse, to survivalist movements, to the way people are constantly trying to predict the big one in terms of global catastrophe. And these prophecies, they slot right into that mindset. People are constantly on the lookout for signs of the end times, whether it's extreme weather, political instability, or the latest scientific breakthrough that seems to challenge our understanding of the universe. There's a sense that things are speeding up. The prophecies of Saint Malachy and John XXIII offer a framework for people who believe there's a divine plan behind it all. They're like a roadmap, or maybe a treasure map, depending on how you look at it, guiding people's thoughts toward what's coming next. Let's take Petrus Romanus, for example. The idea that we're on the verge of the final pope has been around for a while, and with every new papal election, people start speculating, is this it? Is this the one? It happened when Pope Benedict XVI resigned, a rare occurrence in the modern papacy. Conspiracy theorists went wild. Some believed that his resignation was part of the prophecy, that the church was preparing for the end. When Pope Francis was elected, some even pointed out that he chose the name Francis, which could symbolically refer to Saint Peter of Rome, tying him to Petrus Romanus. Even now, with Pope Francis in his 80s, the question looms, will the next pope be the one that Saint Malachy predicted would oversee the church's most difficult trial? While most Catholics don't necessarily subscribe to this belief, the buzz around it is still palpable. You see it on social media, in articles from alternative media outlets, and in conversations among those who are always looking for the next big sign of the apocalypse. Then there's the prophecy of John XXIII, which has its own modern-day implications, with predictions supposedly covering everything from space exploration to nuclear threats. This prophecy taps into fears and fascinations that are incredibly relevant today. For instance, some of John XXIII's supposed predictions have been tied to the rise of artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, and even the potential for humanity to make contact with extraterrestrial life. We're living in an age of incredible technological advancements, and with every new leap, there's a sense that we might be edging closer to something monumental, something world-changing. And let's not forget the theory that John XXIII had a personal encounter with an extraterrestrial. This story has taken on a life of its own in modern UFO culture, with governments around the world, including the U.S., declassifying documents related to UFO sightings and unexplained aerial phenomena. The idea that a pope may have had a secret encounter with a being from another world suddenly feels a little less outlandish. The question becomes, what did John XXIII see, and how might that encounter tie into the prophecies about the future of the church and humanity? But here's where things get really interesting. How these prophecies play into modern conspiracy theories about the Vatican. There's a long-standing belief that the Vatican holds vast amounts of hidden knowledge, from secret archives to forbidden texts. Some believe that the Church knows more about humanity's future, and maybe even extraterrestrial life, than it's letting on. The Vatican's secrecy, combined with these prophecies, has fueled countless theories that there's more going on behind those ancient walls than the public will ever know. For instance, some conspiracy theorists believe that the Vatican's involvement in global affairs goes far beyond spiritual leadership. They point to the Church's influence in geopolitical events, its wealth, and its close ties to world leaders as evidence that the Vatican might be playing a role in shaping the future according to the visions in these prophecies. It's a tantalizing idea that somewhere in those vaults are documents that reveal the Church's plan for navigating the end times, or maybe even a disclosure about extraterrestrial life. Whether you believe it or not, the intrigue keeps people hooked. Now, let's talk about how these prophecies have found their way into popular culture. We've all seen movies, books, and TV shows that play off the idea of ancient prophecies coming true. From the Da Vinci Code to documentaries about the end of the world, the concept of hidden knowledge and secret prophecies resonates with audiences in a big way. The prophecy of the popes and the prophecy of John XXIII have become part of that cultural fabric, referenced not just in religious circles, but in entertainment, where they're used as plot devices to build suspense and drama. But more than just being cultural curiosities, these prophecies tap into a deeper human need to understand the future, to find meaning in the chaos, and to believe that someone somewhere knows what's coming next. In a world where uncertainty seems to be the only constant, these ancient predictions offer a sense of direction, even if they're cryptic and open to interpretation. And that's why they continue to matter today. They speak to our fears, our hopes, and our deep-seated need for answers in a world that feels increasingly unpredictable. Whether they're genuine prophecies or clever forgeries, they've become part of the broader conversation about where we're headed as a species. In the next section, we'll wrap it all together and talk about what these prophecies might mean for the future of the Church and humanity. Could they be guiding us toward a great transformation, or are they just relics of the past, forever open to interpretation? All right, let's bring it all together now. We've covered the origins of these prophecies, how they've influenced the Church, and why they still resonate in modern times. But the big question hanging over all of this is, what do these prophecies mean for the future? Are we talking about a roadmap guiding humanity through some major transformation? Or are these just historical relics, fascinating but ultimately meaningless in the grand scheme of things? First, let's consider the perspective that these prophecies are guiding us toward some kind of profound change, whether spiritual, geopolitical, or even extraterrestrial. For those who believe in the prophecy of the popes, the figure of Petrus Romanus looms large. As the final pope, he's supposed to oversee a time of great tribulation, possibly even the fall of the Catholic Church, or the world as we know it. The Church, being a central institution in global history and culture, holds an enormous influence, not just over its 1.3 billion members, but over world affairs in general. So if we're really on the verge of this prophesied end, the implications could be massive. What would that look like? Well, depending on how you interpret the prophecy, it could range from the church losing its power and influence, perhaps due to scandals, declining membership, or societal shifts, to something much more dramatic, like an apocalyptic event that alters the course of humanity. The current state of the world, with rising global tensions, the rapid advancement of technology, and environmental crises, makes the idea of an imminent transformation feel a little more tangible, doesn't it? But before we get too far down the doomsday rabbit hole, let's look at the flip side. What if these prophecies, as some scholars suggest, are nothing more than historical curiosities or even intentional forgeries? After all, the prophecy of the popes appeared during a politically charged papal election, and the prophecy of John XXIII wasn't even public knowledge until after his death. Maybe these predictions were just tools used by certain factions to influence people or push a particular agenda. If that's the case, then the real power of these prophecies doesn't lie in their accuracy, but in their ability to capture the imagination. They've become cultural touchstones because they tap into universal human themes: fear of the unknown, the desire to understand the future, and the search for meaning in an often chaotic world. Even if they're just clever pieces of historical fiction, they've taken on a life of their own, becoming part of the broader narrative that shapes how we think about the future. And then, of course, there's the question of extraterrestrial life. If John XXIII really predicted contact with beings from another world, or if he had his own personal encounter, as the legend suggests, what does that mean for us? In a world where governments are slowly starting to acknowledge the existence of unexplained aerial phenomena, the idea of a pope being aware of, or even interacting with extraterrestrials, takes on a whole new level of intrigue. Could it be that some of these prophecies aren't just about the church or humanity, but about our place in the universe? The idea that the Vatican might be sitting on secret knowledge about life beyond Earth isn't as far-fetched as it once seemed. After all, if anyone were to have access to that kind of information, it would make sense that it would be kept within the Vatican's closely guarded archives. If John XXIII or his predecessors had any inkling of this, it would add a whole new layer of meaning to his prophecies, especially if he believed that such contact would have spiritual implications for humanity. So, where does that leave us? Are we on the brink of an apocalyptic trial for the church, as the prophecy of the Pope suggests? Or are we heading toward a new era of understanding, where we're forced to confront the reality of our place in the cosmos? Maybe it's both. Maybe these prophecies are preparing us for a transformation that goes beyond the church itself and touches on something much bigger, something that reshapes our entire view of existence. But here's the thing: regardless of whether these prophecies are real or not, they've done something incredibly powerful. They've sparked thought, debate, and curiosity. And isn't that what prophecy is supposed to do? Whether divinely inspired or just the product of human imagination, these prophecies have planted seeds of wonder in our minds. They force us to think about the future, to question our place in the world, and to prepare spiritually, mentally, and maybe even physically for whatever might come next. In the end, the true value of these prophecies might not lie in their ability to predict specific events, but in their ability to get us thinking about faith, about the future, and about the mysteries that still exist in this world, and maybe even beyond it. So what do you think? Are these prophecies guiding us towards something profound, or are they just the relics of an old world trying to find relevance in a new one? Either way, they've certainly left their mark on history and on all of us. All right, that's the big picture. But before we wrap up, I want to know, where do you stand on this? Are you a believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between? Either way, these prophecies offer a fascinating window into how we, as humans, deal with the unknown. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of Broadcasting Seeds. We've traveled through time, explored ancient prophecies, and ventured into the realms of conspiracy and cosmic possibility. Whether you're still scratching your head or your mind is racing with new thoughts, that's what we're all about here, planting seeds of curiosity and letting them grow. The prophecy of the popes and the prophecy of John XXIII have certainly left us with plenty to ponder. Are we on the edge of something great or something terrifying? Only time will tell. But here's the thing. These topics aren't just fun little mental exercises. They matter. They push us to question, to dig deeper, and to always keep an open mind about the world around us. That's why I do this show, to get all of us thinking outside the box, questioning the status quo, and exploring the mysteries that don't always have easy answers. If today's episode has you feeling intrigued, confused, or just plain fascinated, I encourage you to keep the conversation going. And hey, maybe you've got your own take on these prophecies or an interpretation I didn't cover. If so, I'd love to hear from you. Before I go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss an episode of Broadcasting Seeds. If you enjoyed today's journey into the strange and unexplained, please take a moment to rate and review the show. It helps more curious minds find us and join the conversation. And of course, if you know someone who would love diving into these kinds of topics, be sure to share this episode with them. Thanks again for tuning in and being part of the Broadcasting Seeds family. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and keep planting those seeds. Who knows what kind of wild ideas will grow together next time. I'm Bennett Tanton, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared, hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe all my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they fill in the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears, regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are fading now. All my